What's up guys, my name is Harshal Mavani, and in this video we take a look at the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. We also try to relate this particular topic with the difference between the throws and the throw keyword, and by the end of it we'll try to connect all the dots. All of this definitely not in 5 minutes, so get your chips and popcorn ready because it's going to be a big video. Let's get started. Now the checked exceptions, as the name suggests, are actually checked for during your compile time. When I say checked for, I actually mean that your compiler will go scan your entire code and search for places where your exceptions are being created by you. While unchecked exceptions are those which cannot be anticipated. Now these exceptions are actually a result, majority of them are a result of user error. So if you take an example of the unchecked exception, we have the runtime exception or the null pointer exception. Now this null pointer exception is occurred at runtime. At compile time, your compiler cannot predict the possibility of a null pointer exception. So that's a brief introduction to the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. We'll come back to this topic again, but as of now, let's focus on checked exceptions, and we want to understand what is the throws keyword, the throw keyword, and how are they related to checked exceptions. Let us understand the throw keyword. So by doing something like throw new IO exception, I am actually generating an exception object. By doing so, I am actually generating an exception object. Now this object, this newly created exception object has to be handled by someone or the other. And when I say handled, I mean the try catch block. It has to reach the try catch block in some form. So when I say it has to reach the try catch block, I actually mean, suppose you have this condition. So I actually mean something like this. You have function 1 which calls function 2. Function 2 internally calls function 3. Function 2 internally calls function 3. Just function 2 internally calls function 3. And if inside your function 3 you have a statement like throw new IO exception, then it becomes important that either function 3 or function 2 or function 1 handle your exception. And when I say handle, I mean it has to be inside a try catch block. So this is the basic criteria of exceptions. You have to handle them at some point or the other. Now as we know that the IO exception is checked at compile time. So when you try to compile a code like this, wherein you have function 1 which internally calls function 2, function 2 which internally calls function 3, and finally inside your function 3 you have the throw new exception statement which will actually generate your exception object. By doing so, at compile time you will definitely get an error, and let's have a look at that error. We'll put all of this on code and let's see what error we have. So I have this piece of code over here. We have exception demo class, we have the public static void main which calls function 1. Function 1 calls function 2, function 2 calls function 3, and finally inside function 3 we have thrown a new IO exception object. So we have created a new exception over here in this particular function. So let's just try and compile this particular piece of code, and we are expecting an error. Java C space exception demo.java, and we have an error. Unreported exception IO exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. So this statement suggests that we have two options. In our code, when we have something like this, that is, we are actually throwing a new checked exception. I repeat, this is true only in case of checked exceptions because unchecked exceptions are not scanned at compile time. Checked exceptions are scanned for at compile time. So by doing so, we now have two options. Let's see those two options. We have either must be caught or declared to be thrown. We have two options, as I said again. We have A, either must be caught or declared to be thrown. So this is where our throws keyword comes into the picture. So let's have a look at how will we solve this problem.